Good morning from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's 8:45 on Thursday, the 5th of September 2024. We're already 5 days in, and I remember pitching and punching and kvetching and munching and twitching and fitching about it being the 1st of September. Where is time flying? Am I right? As you can hear, I'm coming down with a barking bronchitis because I've had an earache since Tuesday. And when I get these kind of earaches that don't go away and snuffly noses, it always goes to my chest, which is why I'm chronically fucking ill. And I'm so sick of that. I've just been to the doctor who tells me I'm the picture of health. Oh, the irony. Told me my dizziness was just old age. I debriefed with my psychiatrist today. He said, "What kind of doctor tells you your dizziness is old age?" I said, "A man," forgetting that, of course, my psychiatrist is also a man. So he just sort of looked at me and blinked a few times, and we had to kind of process that gnosis. Doctors aren't what they used to be. They really aren't. They leave you out. They leave you to die. But however, this GP that I did see did bow to me when I told him that I had rejected all of the that came out of where, China and American biolabs. He thought that was he must have thought that was very brave and audacious of me. But now I'm brewing a sickness, and I better fucking not, because I'm going dancing on Friday night. I can't go if it's something contagious, Usually I do go if it's just my asthma or bronchitis, because I always have that. It's not contagious, but yeah, not happy about the snuffly nose as well. Well, we'll see how we go. We have one more day to get through today, then one more sleep, then tomorrow another day, and maybe I'll feel better by 11 p.m. on Friday night. I usually do. It's mind over matter. It's my shamanistic capabilities of fighting between the thin membrane between life and death, like the Vitruvian, in my case, very fat, short hobbit, Vitruvian woman holding the circle of life at bay and just standing there like a stargate into another dimension or another space-time continuum. I can do this. I can do it. I've done it before. I'll do it again. But oh, by the gods. Anyway, this morning I've got my cleaning lady Rati coming, who's just an angel and a delight. And then I've been hammered down and nagged and pressured, and it's been on for days because they wouldn't listen to me when I said I wasn't available till Thursday. So I've got some maintenance contractors to come and look at my rotting wooden steps, at my front 12 steps and my back steps, and that's supposed to happen between 9:30 and 11:30 or something like that. So I'm trying to squeeze in a video finishing the reading of The Last Unicorn, but we may get interrupted when the contractor arrives or when Rati arrives. Hope you don't mind. You'll just hear me go, "Oh, wait a minute," and I'll just mutter, and I'll come back to you. But that won't be too long an interruption. Anyway, you have the power of the fast forward button, babies. Fast forward. I've got to live life in real time, 1 second, 1 moment, 1 breath at a time. Sometimes it's a little bit astonishing, even for me. But anyway, on we go. Let us begin. The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle, Chapter 11. I'm going to sound pretty weird because, my voice is all hoarse too. And well, it is what it is. Missions must be completed, horse or no horse, unicorn or no unicorn. On we go, babies. I've been awake since 6 and I slept until about 7:30, just sort of lay there enjoying the warmth of my electric blanket and snoozing intermittently. So I'm not too tired. I'm just you know, I'm just surviving day by day as I do. Right, let's carry on. Prince Lear came home 3 days after he set out to slay the maiden-fancying ogre, with the great axe of Duke Alban slung behind him, and the ogre's head bumping at his saddle bow. He offered neither prize to the Lady Amalthea, nor did he rush to find her with the monster's blood still brown on his hands. He really has no clues on how to turn on a woman, does he? The oaf. He had made up his mind, as he explained to Molly Grew in the scullery that evening, never more to trouble the Lady Amalthea with his attentions. Good idea. But to live quietly in the thought of her, serving her ardently until his lonely death, but seeking neither her company, her admiration, nor her love. It's probably what the rest of my lost loves are all doing. Still jerking off behind computer screens, laughing at me, and with their various degrees of schadenfreude, because I too shall have my lonely death. I'm not settling for lackluster, sadistic, low entities. Just saying. It's not the men in my life that count. It's the life in my men. True passion, heartfelt intentions, honour and integrity, and on we go and on we go. And I'm really, really pissed off because that person I'm thinking of knows that's what I'm like too. Anyway, life goes on. Mama T will dance her dance to her own oblivion. The music will happen, the dancing will happen. No doubt we'll both get over ourselves and continue on as always. And life will be beautiful, as it always is, because attitude is everything. Life is what you make of it, my darlings. I haven't had a very nice life, just saying. But by the gods, I'm making my beautiful life in the eternal now, every day and every way. Even reading you zany stories, zany, magical, mystical stories. Because why not? What else are we going to do? Cry in our beer. Let the ones who have the need to jerk off behind computer screens do their jerking offs. We should supply them with a factory load of socks, shouldn't we? Oh, I'm being mean. I'm being a bit mean. But you know what the women and the women in my audience are laughing their ass off now, right? Because they know what I mean. But I'm triggered by Lady Amalthea and Prince Lear. Ah, Lady Amalthea was not for him. She's a unicorn. She's not a mere mortal. He should have got that from the very beginning. But no, he didn't, did he? Anyway, throwing her lumps of lumpy, bumpy ogres' heads and dragons' heads and all that blood and gore, wouldn't stimulate me either, darlings. What does stimulate me? I don't know. I'm joking. I'm not going to tell you what stimulates me. I can't give away all my secrets on YouTube. Anyway, here we go. I will be as anonymous as the air she breathes, he said, as invisible as the force that holds her on the earth. Thinking about it for a while, he added, I may write a poem for her now and then and slip it under her door, or just leave it somewhere for her to chance upon, but I won't ever sign the poem. It's very noble, Molly said. She felt relieved that the prince was giving up his courtship, and amused as well, and somewhat sad. Girls like poems better than dead dragons and magic swords, she offered. I always did anyway, when I was a girl. The reason I ran off with Cully. But Prince Lear interrupted her, saying firmly, "No, do not give me hope. I must learn to live without hope, as my father does, and perhaps we will understand each other at last." He dug into his pockets, and Molly heard paper crackling. "Actually, I've already written a few poems about it. Hope and her and so on. You might look them over if you wanted to." "I'd be very pleased," Molly said. "But will you never go out again then to fight with black knights and ride through rings of fire?" Oh, dear goddess. The words were meant teasingly, but she found as she spoke that she would have been a little sorry if it were taken off. A little sorry if it were so, for his adventures had made him much handsomer and taken off a lot of weight and given him, besides, a hint of the musky fragrance of death that clings to all heroes. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. My continuous fighting of death. Yes, that bastard Richie at the Live Wire bar said it to me. He said, "I have the scent of death." Little does he know, the little midget Yankee Doodle without any noodle, trying to Yankee Doodle dandy me and point the bone at me. "I'll have you and your little dog too." But he got my little dog, didn't he? He got my little dog, the motherfucker. Well, all heroes have a distinct charisma about them. We're powerful for a reason. She sighs. But the prince shook his head, looking almost embarrassed. "Oh, I suppose I'll keep my hand in," he muttered. "But it wouldn't be for the show of it, or for her to find out. It was like that at first, but you get into the habit of rescuing people, breaking enchantments, challenging the wicked duke in fair combat. It's hard to give up being a hero once you get used to it. Do you like the first poem?" "It certainly has a lot of feeling," she said. "Can you really rhyme bloomed and ruined?" "It needs a bit of smoothing out," Prince Lear admitted. "Miracle's the word I'm worried about. I was wondering about grackle myself. No, the spelling. Is it one R and two L's or the other way around?" "One R anyway, I think," Molly said. Schmendrick, for the magician had just stooped through the doorway. "How many R's are in miracle?" "Two," he answered wearily. "It has the same root as mirror." "Shh, don't tell them. Molly ladled him out a bowl of broth, and he sat down at the table. His eyes were hard and cloudy as jade, and one of the lids was twitching. "I can't do this very much longer," he said slowly. "It isn't this horrible place. It isn't having to be listening for him all the time. I'm getting rather good at that. It's the wretched cheapjack flummery he has me perform for him hours on end all night last night. I wouldn't mind if he asked for the real magic, or even for simple conjuring, but it's always the rings and the goldfish, the cards and the scarves and the string, exactly as it was in the midnight carnival. I can't do it. Not much more." "But that was what he wanted you for," Molly protested. If he wanted real magic, he'd have kept the old magician, that Mabruk. Schmendrick raised his head and gave her a look that was almost amused. I didn't mean it like that, she said. Besides, it's only a little while until we find the way to the Red Bull that the cat told me about. She lowered her voice to a whisper as she spoke this last, and both of them glanced quickly over at Prince Lear. But he was sitting on a stool in the corner, evidently writing another poem. Gazelle, he murmured, tapping his pen against his lips. Demoiselle, citadelle, asphodel, philomel, parallel. He chose farewell and scribbled rapidly. We will never find the way, Schmendrick said very quietly. Even if the cat told the truth, which I doubt, Haggard will make sure we never have time to investigate the skull and the clock. Why do you suppose he piles more work on you every day, if not to keep you from prowling and prying in the great hall? Why do you think he keeps me entertaining him with my carnival tricks? Why do you think he took me as his wizard in the first place? Molly, he knows. I'm sure of it. He knows what she is, though he doesn't quite believe it yet. But when he does, he'll know what to do. He knows. I see it in his face sometimes. The lift of longing and the crush of loss, Prince Lear said. The bitterness of tumpty-umpty os, cross, boss, moss. Damn. Schmendrick leaned across the table. We can't stay here and wait for him to strike. The only hope we have is to escape at night. By sea, perhaps, if I can lay hold of a boat somewhere. The men-at-arms will look the other way, and the gate. But the others, she cried softly. How can we leave when she has come so far to find the other unicorns, and we know they are here? Yet one small, tender, treacherous part of her was suddenly eager to be convinced of the quest's failure, and she knew it, and was angry at Schmendrick. Well, but what about your magic, she asked. What about your own little search? Are you going to give that up too? Will she die in human shape and you live forever? You might as well let the bull have her then. The magician sank back, his face gone, as pale and crumpled as a washerwoman's fingers. Oh, Cookie's here. He's looking with great earnest at the ground. There must be a worm. It doesn't really matter one way or the other, he said, almost to himself. She's no unicorn now, but a mortal woman, someone for that lout to sigh over and write poems about. Maybe Haggard won't find her out after all. She'll be his daughter, and he'll never know. That's funny. He put his soup aside untasted and leaned his head into his hands. I couldn't change her back into a unicorn if we did find the others, he said. There's no magic in me. Schmendrick, she began, but at that moment he jumped to his feet and rushed out of the scullery, though she had not heard the king summon him. Prince Lear never looked up, but went on drumming meters and sampling rhymes. Molly hung a kettle over the fire for the sentry's tea. I've got it all but the final couplet, Lear said presently. Do you want to hear it now, or would you rather wait? Whichever you like, she said, so he read it then, but she never heard a word of it. Fortunately, the men-at-arms came in before he had finished reading, and he was too shy to ask her opinion in their presence. By the time they left, he was working on something else, and it was very late when he bade her good night. Molly was sitting at the table, holding her motley cat. The new poem was meant to be a sestina, and Prince Lear's head was jangling happily as he juggled the end words on his way up the stairs to his chamber. I will leave the first one at her door, he thought, and save the others until tomorrow. Oh, isn't he sweet? Oh, I don't think a man's ever written me poems. I did have some lovely times reading poems with my friend Jared, though. That used to drive my ex-husband crazy. We were still married then, and Michael would invite Jared over to keep me entertained. Not anything sus, people, don't get that wrong. But it was weird how he brought that man into our life, that beautiful young man. And Jared being articulate and intelligent and just so wonderful. We would sit around reading tarot cards or reading poetry or reading stories from paranormal magazines, which was our grand passion because, we have similar paths. And my ex-husband would just sort of sit back and mutter away to himself because he was so fucking boring and had no interest in anything except fishing and feeding and he was just a non-entity. As one psychic described him after my separation, he said, "Why did you marry that hairy aardvark?" And he's never set eyes on my ex-husband before. He could see him. Being psychic, he could see what he looked like. I said, "How do you know he looks like a hairy aardvark?" And the guy said, "I'm psychic." I went, "You truly are. That's an accurate depiction of him." But anyway, I still laugh about that to this day. It was delightful. Anyway, I said I married him because he was jolly and fun and told jokes and, I thought I was going to have a happy, easygoing, joyful life with him. He said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, the minute I signed the ketubah, the Jewish wedding certificate, he turned into a morose, depressed, malcontent that was constantly negative and had no joy in him at all. I married an illusion. He faked everything right up to signing the wedding certificate. This is why I have an abject horror of people who fake things around me to this day. I can't abide it. I can't abide that. Be your own authentic self at all times with me, or slough the fuck off. Anyway. Where were we when I segued into that little bit of personal processing? We were over the page. We were past where it said the poem was a sestina. Ah, yes, leaving the first poem at her door. Oh. He was debating his original decision against signing his work and playing with such pen names as The Knight of the Shadows and Le Chevalier Mal-Aimé. I like that one. The poorly loved knight. Oh dear, God bless. Well, the queen of the unrequited can only laugh because she knows how that goes, babies. When he turned a corner and met the lady Amalthea, she was coming down quickly in the dark, and when she saw him, she made a strange bleating sound and stood still 3 steps above him. She wore a robe that one of the king's men had stolen for her in Hagsgate. Her hair was down and her feet were bare, and the sight of her on the stair sent such sorrow licking along Prince Lear's bones that he dropped his poems and his pretences altogether and actually turned to run. But he was a hero in all ways, and he turned bravely back to face her, oh, a real man, saying in a calm and courtly manner, "Give you good evening, my lady." The lady Amalthea stared at him through the gloom, putting out a hand, but drawing it back before she touched him. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Are you Ruch?" "I'm Lear," he answered, suddenly frightened. "Don't you know me?" But she backed away, and it seemed to the prince that her steps were as flowing as an animal's, and that she even lowered her head in the way of a goat or a deer. He said, "I'm Lear." "The old woman," said the lady Amalthea. "The moon went out." Ah! She shivered once, and then her eyes recognized him. But all her body was still wild and watchful, and she came no nearer to him. "You were dreaming, my lady," he said, finding knightly speech again. "I would that I might know your dream." "I have dreamed it before," she answered slowly. "I was in a cage, and there were others, beasts in cages, and an old woman. But I will not trouble you, my lord prince. I have dreamed it many times before." She would have left him then, but he spoke to her in a voice that only heroes have, as many animals develop a certain call when they become mothers. A dream that returns so often is like to be a messenger, come to warn you of the future or to remind you of things untimely forgotten. Say more of this if you will, and I will try to riddle it for you. Thereupon she halted, looking at him with her head a little turned, still with the air of some slim, furred creature peering out of a thicket. But her eyes held a human look of loss, as though she had missed something she needed, or suddenly realized that she had never had it. If he had even blinked, she would have been gone, but he did not blink, and he held her as he had learned to hold griffins and chimeras, motionless with his steady gaze. Her bare feet... Are we still filming? We got battery issues. We've got battery issues. Dear goddess. It's always something in Titania's realm, isn't it? Nothing runs smoothly ever. Never mind. I'm used to living a hurdy-gurdy life. I'm used to it. Grinds my gears, but I am accustomed to it. Right, where are we now? Where are we now, my loves? He held griffins and chimeras motionless with his steady gaze. Her bare feet wounded him deeper than any tusk or writhing talon ever had. But he was a true hero. She must have had very lovely feet to wound him in that way. The lady Amalthea said, "In the dream there are black barred wagons, and beasts that are and are not, and a winged being that clangs like metal in the moonlight. The tall man has green eyes and bloody hands. The tall man must be your uncle, the magician, Prince Lear mused. That part's clear enough anyway, and the bloody hands don't surprise me. I never cared much for his looks, if you'll pardon my saying so. Is that all the dream? I cannot tell you all of it, she said. It is never finished. Fear came back to her eyes like a great stone falling into a pool. All was clouded and swirling, and quick shadows were rushing everywhere. She said, I am running away from a good place where I was safe, and the night is burning around me, but it is day too, and I am walking under beech trees in the warm, sour rain, and there are butterflies and a honey sound and dappled roads and towns like fish bones, and the flying thing is killing the old woman. I am running and running into the freezing fire, however I turn, and my legs are the legs of a beast. Lady, Prince Lear broke in, my lady, by your leave, no more. Her dream was darkening into shape between them, and suddenly he did not want to know what it meant. No more, he said. But I must go on, said the Lady Amalthea, for it is never finished. Even when I wake, I cannot tell what is real and what I am dreaming as I move and speak and eat my dinner. I remember what cannot have happened and forget something that is happening to me now. People look at me as though I should know them, and I do know them in the dream, and always the fire draws nearer, though I am awake. No more, he said desperately. A witch built this castle, and to speak of nightmares here often makes them come true. It was not her dream that chilled him, but that she did not weep as she told it. As a hero, he understood weeping women and knew how to make them stop crying. Generally, you killed something, but her calm terror confused and unmanned him, while the shape of her face crumbled the distant dignity he had been so pleased at maintaining. When he spoke again, his voice was young and stumbling. I would court you with more grace, he said, if I knew how. My dragons and my feats of arms weary you, but they are all I have to offer. I haven't been a hero for very long, and before I was a hero, I was nothing at all, nothing but my father's dull, soft son. Perhaps I am only dull in a new way now, but I am here, and it is wrong of you to let me go to waste indeed. I wish you wanted something of me. It wouldn't have to be a valiant deed, just useful. Then the Lady Amalthea smiled at him for the first time since she had come to stay in King Haggard's castle. It was a small smile, like the new moon, a slender bend of brightness on the edge of the unseen. But Prince Lear leaned toward it to be warm. He would have cupped his hands around her smile and breathed it brighter if he had dared. Sing to me, she said. That would be valiant, to raise your voice in this dark, lonely place, and it will be useful as well. Sing to me. Sing. I'm going to have to blow my nose. It's just too much people of Earth. your bloody intrepid, amazingly wonderful mother. Mother! Wait. Oh, yes. Singing to me. I do love it when a man sings to me valiantly with great passion and authenticity. Yes. I love it when women sing to me too. I used to love it when my daughter sang to me. She had a lovely singing voice. And she used to play the ukulele for me too. Oh, those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day. We live the life we choose. We'd fight but never lose. Those were the days. Oh yes, those were the days. I can't sing, but I have fun trying. It's awesome sometimes. Apparently I harmonise quite well. I'm sure they're blowing smoke up my ass, but, work with me, babies. It's a whole new version of gaslighting when you spend time with the Aaron's family. Anyway, where were we? Sing to me loudly, drown out my dreams. Keep me from remembering whatever wants me to remember it. Sing to me, my Lord Prince, if it please you. It may not seem a hero's task, but I would be glad of it. So Prince Lear sang out lustily there on the cold stairway, and many damp, unseen creatures went flopping and scurrying for cover before the daylight gaiety of his voice. He sang the first words that came to him, and they were these. When I was a young man and very well thought of, I couldn't ask aught that the ladies denied. I nibbled their hearts like a handful of raisins, and I never spoke love, but I knew that I lied. But I said to myself, they none of them know the secret I shelter and savour and save. I wait for the one who will see through my seeming, and I'll know when I love by the way I behave. The years drifted over like clouds in the heavens. The ladies went by me like snow on the wind. I charmed and I cheated, deceived and dissembled, and I sinned, and I sinned, and I sinned, and I sinned. But I said to myself, are they none of them see this part of me pure as the whisk of a wave? My lady is late, but she'll find I've been faithful. And I'll know when I love by the way I behave. At last came a lady, both knowing and tender, saying, you're not at all what they take you to be. I betrayed her before she'd quite finished speaking, and she swallowed cold poison and jumped in the sea. And I say to myself, when there's time for a word, as I gracefully grow more debauched and depraved, love may be strong, but a habit is stronger, and I knew when I loved by the way I behaved. Very appropriate, very appropriate. The Lady Amalthea laughed when she was done, and that sound seemed to set the old darkness of the castle hissing back from them both. That was useful, she said. Thank you, my lord. I don't know why I sang that one, Prince Lear said awkwardly. One of my father's men used to sing it to me. I don't really believe it. I think that love is stronger than habits or circumstances. I think it's possible to keep yourself for someone for a long time and still remember why you were waiting when she comes at last. Oh, isn't he a darling? If it weren't for the dragon's heads and the ogre's heads, I'd probably take him on. He seems quite sincere for an oath. Oh, Mama T can't be with oaths. No, she cannot. They grind her gears too much. The lady Amalthea smiled again, but she did not answer, and the prince took a single step closer to her. Marvelling at his own boldness, he said softly, I would enter your sleep if I could, and guard you there, and slay the thing that hounds you, as I would if it had the courage to face me in fair daylight. But I cannot come in unless you dream of me. Oh, I once had an Indian woman in a restaurant. Her name was Geeta. I'm not sure what her deal was, but I think she might have been bisexual. She kept telling me how much she hated her husband and looking at me lasciviously. She once told me to come to her in her dreams, which I thought was just some sweet Indian epithet, some bit of, Rumi type poetic gnosis. Then I looked up. And all her decor in her restaurant were actually kind of really, abstract patterns of vaginas, which Jared, my darling friend Jared, politely pointed out. He said to me, beware that Indian woman. She's a lesbian and she wants you. I said, she's a respectable married woman, a businesswoman. Don't be ridiculous, Jared. I was a bit naive in those days. So just to be sure, we went to eat there a second time. And again, she was overly effusive and telling me how much she missed me and longed to meet me in her dreams. And Jared and I just went, we were on to her by then, but I couldn't believe it. But, I sometimes arouse grand passions in people, and it astonishes me quite immensely because I'm like, I don't know what I did. All I did was show up minding my own business. But yes, when I met her, I was wearing like this kind of very pretty, came from India. It was a very pretty kind of gypsy skirt, and it was all different pieces of material patched together, and it was very colourful and had it had an overskirt and underskirt. And, I used to wear even dancing. Even my Indian friend Morris loved that skirt. Oh, they all loved that skirt. And then I'd team it with an underbust and a nice top. And anyway, it was a very nice skirt, but it wasn't particularly erotic or anything that would turn anyone on. But anyway, I still remember that lovely lady. She was like, I love your skirt. It is from India. You look so beautiful. Oh, she said, come to me in your dreams. And because I'm the psychedelic dreamer and I dream all the time, I said, well, that's very likely to happen. Anyway, you have to worry. Nothing against lesbian women. Like, love is love, beautiful sisters of Estros. Love is love, but, I happen to be an asexual, celibate, heterosexual, so it can get a bit awkward when members of my same gender fall madly in love with me, and they're just as persistent as any pernicious, like, lascivious man. It's just as creepy and weird when it happens when it's a female getting overly sexually stimulated by me. Oh, anyway, she says with her stuffy nose and red nose from the CPAP mask, and I look as attractive as a dead dingo's donga right now. But what can I say? It's life, isn't it? L'chaim, welcome to my world. We'll carry on reading. I just had that funny thought. I don't know what triggered that actually. What triggered that funny thought? Didn't have these funny thoughts when I read this book the first time, right? I can tell you that. Sweet 16 and never been kissed. I've got to find where we were up to. Ah, yes, he could not come to her unless she dreamed of him. Before she could speak, if she meant to, they heard footsteps below them on the winding stair, and King Haggard's veiled voice saying, "I heard him singing. What business had he to be singing?" Then Schmendrick, the royal wizard, his own voice, meek and hurried, "Sire, it was but some heroic lay, some chanson de geste, such as he often sings when he rides out to glory or rides home to renown. Be assured, your majesty." "He never sings here," the king said. "He sings continuously on his fool's wanderings, I am sure, because that is what heroes do. But he was singing here, and not of battle and gallantry either, but of love. Where is she?" I knew he was singing of love before I ever heard him, for the very stones shuddered as they do when the ball moves in the earth. Where is she? The prince and the Lady Amalthea looked at each other in the darkness, and in that moment they were side by side, though neither moved. With this came fear of the king, for whatever had been born between them, it might be something he wanted. A landing above them gave onto a corridor. They turned and ran together, though they could not see beyond their breaths. Her feet were as silent as the promise she had given him, but his own heavy boots rang exactly like boots on the stone floor. King Haggard made no pursuit, but his voice rustled down the hallway after them, whispering under the magician's words, "Mice, my lord, beyond a doubt. Fortunately, I am possessed of a singular spell." "Let them run," the king said. "It suits me well that they should run." When they stopped running, wherever they stopped, they looked at each other again. "Ah, the Lady Amalthea has been seduced by poetry and song. Oh, who knew, am I right?" Well, he got there in the end, didn't he, the twat? So the winter whined and crept along, not toward any spring, but toward the brief, devouring summer of King Haggard's country. Life in the castle went on in the silence that fills a place where no one hopes for anything. Molly grew, cooked and laundered, scrubbed stone, mended armour, and sharpened swords. She chopped wood, milled flour, groomed horses, and cleaned their stalls, melted down stolen gold and silver for the king's coffers, and made bricks without straw. And in the evenings, before she went to bed, she usually read over Prince Lear's new poems to the Lady Amalthea and praised them and corrected the spelling. My goodness. Schmendrick fooled and juggled and flim-flammed as the king bade him, hating it, and knowing that Haggard knew he hated it and took his pleasure thereby. He never again suggested to Molly that they escape from the castle before Haggard made sure of the truth of the Lady Amalthea. But he no longer sought to discover the secret way down to the Red Bull, even when he was allowed time to himself. He seemed to have surrendered, not to the king, but to some far older, crueler enemy that had caught up with him at last, this winter, in this place. The Lady Amalthea grew as much more beautiful every day as that day was grimmer and gloomier than the one before. The old men-at-arms coming down drenched and shivering from walking their posts in the rain, or in from stealing things for the king, opened as quietly as flowers when they met her on the stairs or in the hallways. She would smile at them and speak gently, but when she had passed by, the castle always seemed darker than ever, and the wind outside would rattle the thick sky like a sheet on a clothesline, for her beauty was human and doomed, and there was no comfort in it for old men. They could only draw their dripping cloaks tighter and limp on down to the small fire in the scullery. But the Lady Amalthea and Prince Lear walked and spoke and sang together as blithely as though King Haggard's castle had become a green wood, wild and shadowy with spring. They climbed the crooked towers like hills, picnicked in stone meadows under a stone sky, and splashed up and down stairways that had softened and quickened into streams. He told her everything he knew and what he thought about all of it, and happily invented a life and opinions for her, which she helped him do by listening. Nor was she deceiving him, for she truly remembered nothing before the castle and him. She began and ended with Prince Lear, except for the dreams, and they soon faded, as he had said they would. They seldom heard the hunting roar of the Red Bull at night any more, but when the hungering sound came to her ears, then she would be frightened, and the walls and the winter would grow up around them again, as though their spring were all of her making, her joy's gift to the prince. He would have held her at such times, but he had long known her dread of being touched. One afternoon, the Lady Amalthea stood on the highest tower of the castle, watching for Prince Lear's return from an expedition against a brother-in-law of the ogre he had slain, for he still went out on occasional errantries, as he had told Molly he might. The sky was piled up over the valley of Hag's Gate, the colour of dirty soap, but it was not raining. Far below, the sea slid out toward the smoky horizon in hard bands of silver and green and kelpie brown. The ugly birds were restless. They flew out often, 2 and 3 together, circled swiftly over the water, and then returned to strut on the sand, chortling and cocking their heads at King Haggard's castle on the cliff. Said so, said so. The tide was low and near to turning. The Lady Amalthea began to sing, and her voice balanced and hovered in the slow, cold air like another sort of bird. I am a king's daughter, and I grow old within the prison of my person, the shackles of my skin. I would run away and beg from door to door. She did not remember having heard the song before, but the words pinched and plucked at her like children, trying to drag her back to some place that they wanted to see again. She moved her shoulders to get away from them. But I am not old, she said to herself, and I am no prisoner. I am the Lady Amalthea, beloved of Lear, who has come into my dreams, so that I may not doubt myself even while I sleep. Where could I have learned a song of sorrow? I am the Lady Amalthea, and I know only the songs that Prince Lear has taught me. She's given away her fucking identity, people of Earth, but shh, I shouldn't be telling you the plot twist. We all know how that goes, don't we, sisters of Estros? Some of us, sisters of post-Estros, that still remember the meaning of desire and passion and deep devotion and adoration, still swirling in our blood, even though we no longer shed our blood. Oh! Turning into a bitter old crone, aren't I? Oh, well, that too has its season. We will embrace the crone, but we will eviscerate the bitterness and invite instead the sweetness. She lifted a hand to touch the mark on her forehead. The sea wheeled by, calm as the zodiac, and the ugly birds screamed. It troubled her a little that the mark would not go away. Your Majesty, she said, though there had been no sound. She heard the rustling chuckle at her back and turned to see the king. He wore a grey cloak over his mail, but his head was bare. The black lines on his face showed where the fingernails of age had skidded down the hard skin, but he looked stronger than his son and wilder. You are quick for what you are, he said, but slow, I think, for what you were. It is sad that love makes men swift and women slow. I will catch you at last if you love much more. It's been many a woman's undoing, if I say so myself. She smiled at him without replying. She never knew what to say to the pale-eyed old man, whom she so rarely saw, except as a movement on the edge of the solitude that she shared with Prince Lear. Then Arma winked deep in the valley, and she heard the scrape of a weary horse stumbling on stone. Your son is coming home, she said. Let us watch him together. King Haggard came slowly to stand beside her at the parapet, but he gave no more than a glance to the tiny, glinting figure riding home. Nay, what concern have you or I with Lear, truly, he asked. He's none of mine, either by birth or belonging. I picked him up where someone else had set him down, thinking that I had never been happy and never had a son. It was pleasant enough at first, but it died quickly. All things die when I pick them up. I do not know why they die, but it has always been so, save for the one dear possession that has not turned cold and dull as I guarded it, the only thing that has ever belonged to me. His grim face gave the sudden, starved leap of a sprung trap. And Lear will be no help to you in finding it, he said. He has never even known what it is. Without warning, the whole castle sang like a plucked string as the beast, asleep at its root, shifted its dire weight. The Lady Amalthea caught her balance easily, being well used to this, and said lightly, "The Red Bull. But why do you think I have come to steal the bull? I have no kingdom to keep and no wish for conquest. What would I do with him? How much does he eat?" "Do not mock me," the king answered. "The Red Bull is no more mine than the boy is, and he does not eat, and he cannot be stolen. He serves anyone who has no fear, and I have no more fear than I have rest. Yet the Lady Amalthea saw forebodings sliding along the long grey face, scuttling in the shadows of brows and bones. "Do not mock me," he said. "Why will you play that you have forgotten your quest, and that I am to remind you of it? I know what you have come for, and you know very well that I have it. Take it then, take it if you can, but do not dare to surrender now." The black wrinkles were all on edge like knives. Here comes Rati. Prince Lear was singing as he rode, though the Lady Amalthea could not yet hear the words. She said quietly to the king, "My lord, in all your castle, in all your realm, in all the kingdoms that the Red Bull may bring you, there is only one I desire, and you have just told me that he is not yours to give or to keep. Whatever it is you treasure, that is not he. I truly wish you joy of it. Good day, your majesty." She moved toward the tower stairway, but he stood in her way, and she paused, looking at him with her eyes as dark as hoofprints in snow. Oh my goodness. The grey king smiled, and a strange kindness for him chilled her for an instant, for she suddenly fancied that they were somehow alike. But then he said, "I know you. I almost knew you as soon as I saw you on the road, coming to my door with your cook and your clown. Since then, there is no movement of yours that has not betrayed you. A pace, a glance, a turn of the head, the flash of your throat as you breathe, even your way of standing perfectly still, they were all my spies. You have made me wonder for a little while, and in my own way I am grateful, but your time is done." He looked seaward over his shoulder and suddenly stepped to the parapet with the thoughtless grace of a young man. "The tide is turning," he said. "Come and see it. Come here." He spoke very softly, but his voice suddenly held the crying of the ugly birds on the shore. "Come here," he said fiercely. "Come here. I won't touch you." Prince Lear sang, "I will love you as long as I can, however long that may be." The horrible head on his saddle was harmonizing in a kind of bass falsetto. The Lady Amalthea went to stand with the king. Just going to open the back door for my Rati. I get her to come in the back door because it saves running up the steep steps each time. So I know it sounds awful, but that's the reason. It's kinder than it's very, very hard work. Oh, the back door is open. Okay. Right, here we go. And on we go, my darlings. The waves were coming in under the thick swirling sky, growing as slowly as trees as they bulged across the sea. They crouched as they neared the shore, arching their backs higher and higher, and then sprang up the beach as furiously as trapped animals bounding at a wall and falling back with a sobbing snarl to leap again and again, claws caked and breaking, while the ugly birds yelled mournfully. The waves were grey and green as pigeons until they broke, and then they were the colour of the hair that blew across her eyes. There, A strange high voice said close to her, "There they are." King Haggard was grinning at her and pointing down to the white water. "There they are," he said, laughing like a frightened child. "There they are. Say that they are not your people. Say that you did not come here searching for them. Say now that you have stayed all winter in my castle for love." He could not wait for her answer, but turned away to look at the waves. His face was changed beyond believing, delight colouring the sombre skin, rounding over the cheekbones and loosening the bowstring mouth. "They are mine," he said softly. "They belong to me. The Red Bull gathered them for me, one at a time, and I bade him drive each one into the sea. What better place could there be to keep unicorns, and what other cage could hold them? For the bull keeps guard over them, awake or asleep, and he daunted their hearts long ago. Now they live in the sea, and every tide still carries them within an easy step of the land. But they dare not take that step. They dare not come out of the water. They are afraid of the Red Bull." Nearby, Prince Lear sang, "Others may offer more than they can give, all that they have for as long as they live." The Lady Amalthea closed her hands on the parapet and wished for him to come to her, for she knew now that King Haggard was mad. Below them lay the thin, sallow beach and the rocks and the rising tide, and nothing more. I like to watch them. They fill me with joy. The childish voice was all but singing. I am sure it is joy. The first time I felt it, I thought I was going to die. There were two of them in the early morning shadows. One was drinking from a stream, and the other was resting her head on his back. I thought I was going to die. I said to the Red Bull, "I must have that. I must have all of it, all there is, for my need is very great." So the bull caught them one by one. It was all the same to the bull. It would have been the same if I had demanded tumblebugs or crocodiles. He can only tell the difference between what I want and what I do not want. He had forgotten her for the moment as he leaned over the low wall, and she might have fled the tower then, but she stayed where she was, for an old bad dream was waking all around her, though it was daylight. The tide shattered on the rocks and tumbled together again, and Prince Lear rode along singing, "But I will love you as long as I can, and never ask if you love me." "I suppose I was young when I first saw them," King Haggard said. "Now I must be old. At least I have picked many more things up than I had then, and put them all down again. But I always knew that nothing was worth the investment of my heart, because nothing lasts, and I was right, and so I was always old. Yet each time I see my unicorns, it is like that morning in the woods, and I am truly young in spite of myself, and anything can happen in a world that holds such beauty." In the dream I looked down at 4 white legs and felt the earth under split hoofs. There was a burning on my brow as there is now, but there were no unicorns coming in on the tide. The king is mad. He said, I wonder what will become of them when I am gone. The Red Bull will forget them immediately, I know, and be off to find a new master. But I wonder if they will take their freedom even then. I hope not, for then they will belong to me forever. Then he turned to look at her again, and his eyes were as gentle and greedy as Prince Lear's eyes became when he looked at her. You are the last, he said. The bull missed you because you were shaped like a woman, but I always knew. How did you manage the change, by the way? Your magician couldn't have done it. I don't think he could turn cream into butter. If she had let go of the parapet, she would have fallen, but she answered him quite calmly. Morning. I'll just go and welcome my Rati. Hang on, let us go welcome my Rati. She's not mine, you understand, not my personal possession. It's just hello, my darling. Hello. I'm reading stories to
I thought
my
you were talking with somebody.
YouTube. Say hello to Rati.
Hi.
This is Rati. So I'm in the middle of reading it, so okay. I'll let you carry on. Yeah?
Right.
Okay, cool. I'm also waiting for a man to come to do a job. It's like, inshallah, alhamdulillah. It's like waiting for Godot. But they will come. They will come. Right, where were we? Yes. But she answered him quite calmly. My lord, I do not understand. I see nothing at all in the water. The king's face shivered as though she were looking at him through fire. Do you still deny yourself? He whispered. Do you dare deny yourself? Listen, Charlie loves Rati. Can you hear the excitement? She's so excited. It's cute. Do you dare deny yourself? Nay, that's as false and cowardly as though you were truly human. I'll hurl you down to your folk with my own hands if you deny yourself. He took a step toward her and she watched him with her eyes open, unable to move. The tumult of the sea filled her head together with Prince Lear's singing and the blubbering death wail of the man named Ruch. King Haggard's grey face hung over her like a hammer, muttering, It must be so. I cannot be mistaken. Yet her eyes are as stupid as his, as any eyes that never saw unicorns, never saw anything but themselves in a glass. What cheat is this? How can it be? There are no green leaves in her eyes now. Yes, because she'd given herself over to a human man and lost her primordial identity and no doubt her magic with it. Must never do that, girlfriends. Then she did close her eyes, but she shut in more than she kept out. The bronze-winged creature with a hag's face swung by, laughing and prattling, and the butterfly folded its wings to strike. The Red Bull moved silently through the forest, pushing the bare branches aside with its pale horns. She knew when King Haggard went away, but she did not open her eyes. It was long after, or only a little while later, that she heard the magician's voice behind her. Be still, it's over. She had not known that she was making any sound. In the sea, he said, in the sea. Well, don't feel too bad about it. I didn't see them either, not this time or any other that I've stood here and watched the tide coming in. But he saw them, and if Haggard sees something, it's there. He laughed with a sound like an axe falling on wood. Don't feel bad. This is a witch castle, and it's hard to look closely at things living here. It's not enough to be ready to see. You have to be looking all the time." He laughed again, more gently. "All right," he said. "We'll find them now. Come on, come with me." Right. Chapter 12. In the great hall of King Haggard's castle, the clock struck 6. Actually, it was 11 minutes past midnight, but the hall was little darker than that. It had been 6 o'clock, or at noon. Yet those who lived in the castle told time by the difference in the dark. There were hours when the hall was cold simply for want of warmth, and gloomy for lack of light, when the air was stale and still, and the stones stank of old water because there were no windows to let in the scouring wind. That was daytime. But at night, as some trees hold a living light all day, hold it with the undersides of their leaves until long after sundown, so at night the castle was charged and swarming with darkness, alive with darkness. Then the great hall was cold for a reason. Then the small sounds that slept by day woke up to patter and scratch in the corners. It was night when the old smell of the stones seemed to rise from far below the floor. "Light a light," Molly Grew said. "Please, can you make a light?" Schmendrick muttered something curt and professional. For a moment nothing happened, but then a strange, sallow brightness began to spread over the floor, scattering itself about the room in 1,000 scurrying shards that shone and squeaked. The little night beasts of the castle were glowing like fireflies. They darted here and there in the hall, raising swift shadows with their sickly light and making the darkness even colder than before. "I wish you hadn't done that," Molly said. "Can you turn them off again? The purple ones, anyway, with the legs, I guess?" "No, I can't," Schmendrick answered crossly. "Be quiet. Where's the skull?" The Lady Amalthea could see it grinning from a pillar, lemon small in the shadows and dim as the morning moon, but she said nothing. She had not spoken since she came down from the tower. "There," the magician said. He strode to the skull and peered into its split and crumbling eye sockets for a long time, nodding slowly and making solemn sounds to himself. Molly Grew stared with equal earnestness, but she glanced often at the Lady Amalthea. At last Schmendrick said, "All right, don't stand so close." "Are there really spells to make a skull speak?" Molly asked. The magician stretched out his fingers and gave her a small, competent smile. "There are spells to make everything speak. The master wizards were great listeners, and they devised ways to charm all things of the world, living and dead, into talking to them. That is most of it, being a wizard, seeing and listening." He drew a long breath, suddenly looking away and rubbing his hands together. "The rest is technique," he said. "Well, here we go." Abruptly, he turned to face the skull, put one hand lightly on the pale crown, and addressed it in a deep, commanding voice. The words marched out of his mouth like soldiers, their steps echoing with power as they crossed the dark air, but the skull made no answer at all. I just wondered, the magician said softly. He lifted his hand from the skull and spoke to it again. This time the sound of the spell was reasonable and cajoling and almost plaintive. The skull remained silent, but it seemed to Molly that a wakefulness slipped across the faceless front and was gone again. In the scuttling light of the radiant vermin, the Lady Amalthea's hair shone like a flower. Appearing neither interested nor indifferent, but quiet in the way that a battlefield is sometimes quiet. She watched as Schmendrick recited one incantation after another to a desert-coloured knob of bone that spoke not one word more than she did. Each charm was uttered in a more despairing tone than the last. The skull would not speak. And yet Molly Grew was certain that it was aware and listening and amused. She knew the silence of mockery too well to mistake it for death. The clock struck 29. At least it was at that point that Molly lost count. The rusty strokes were still clanging to the floor when Schmendrick suddenly shook both fists at the skull and shouted, all right for you, you pretentious kneecap. How would you like a punch in the eye?" On the last words, his voice unravelled completely into a snarl of misery and rage. "That's right," the skull said. "Yell. Wake up, old haggard." Its own voice sounded like branches creaking and knocking together in the wind. "Yell louder," it said. "The old man's probably around here somewhere. He doesn't sleep much." Molly gave a small cry of delight, and even the Lady Amalthea moved a step nearer. Schmendrick shook with his fists shut and no triumph in his face. The skull said, "Come on, ask me how to find the Red Bull. You can't go wrong asking my advice. I'm the king's watchman, set to guard the way to the bull. Even Prince Lear doesn't know the secret way, but I do." A little timidly, Molly Grew asked, "If you are truly on guard here, why don't you give the alarm? Why do you offer to help us instead of summoning the men-at-arms?" The skull gave a rattling chuckle. "I've been upon this pillar a long time," it said. "I was Haggard's chief henchman once, until he smote off my head for no reason. That was back in the days when he was being wicked to see if that was what he really liked to do. It wasn't. But he thought he might as well get some use out of my head, so he stuck it up here to serve as his sentinel. Under the circumstances, I'm not as loyal to King Haggard as I might be." Schmendrick spoke in a low voice. "Answer the riddle then. Tell us the way to the Red Bull." "No," said the skull. Then it laughed like mad. "Why not?" Molly cried furiously. "What kind of game?" The skull's long yellow jaws never moved, but it was some time before the mean laughter chattered to a halt. Even the hurrying night things paused for a moment, stranded in their candy light, until it stopped. "I'm dead," said the skull. "I'm dead, and I'm hanging in the dark, watching over Haggard's property. The only small amusement I have is to irk and exasperate the living, and I don't get much chance of that. It's a sad loss, because in life mine was a particularly exasperating nature. You'll pardon me, I'm sure, if I indulge myself with you a little. Try me tomorrow. Maybe I'll tell you tomorrow. But we have no time, Molly pleaded. Schmendrick nudged her, but she rushed on, stepping close to the skull and appealing directly to its uninhabited eyes. We have no time. We may be too late now. I have time, the skull replied reflectively. It's really not so good to have time. Rush, scramble, desperation, dismissed, that left behind, those others too big to fit into such a small space. That's the way life was meant to be. You're supposed to be too late for some things. Don't worry about it. Molly would have entreated further, but the magician gripped her arm and pulled her aside. Be still, he said in a swift, fierce voice. Not a word, not another word. The damned thing spoke, didn't it? Maybe that's all the riddle requires. It isn't, the skull informed him. I'll talk as much as you like, but I won't tell you anything. That's pretty rotten, isn't it? You should have seen me when I was alive. Schmendrick paid no attention. Where's the wine? He demanded of Molly. Let me see what I can do with the wine. I couldn't find any, she said nervously. I looked everywhere, but I don't think there's a drop in the castle. The magician glared at her in vast silence. I looked, she said. Schmendrick raised both arms slowly and let them fall to his sides. Well, he said, well, that's it then. If we can't find the wine, I have my illusions, but I can't make wine out of the air. The skull giggled in a clacking, talky way. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed, it remarked. Not by most magicians, anyway. From a fold in her dress, Molly produced a small flask that gleamed faintly in the darkness. She said, I thought if you had some water to start with. Schmendrick and the skull gave her very much the same look. Well, it's been done, she said loudly. It's not as though you'd have to make up something new. I'd never ask that of you. Hearing herself, she looked sideways at the Lady Amalthea, but Schmendrick took the flask from her hand and studied it thoughtfully, turning it over and murmuring curious, fragile words to himself. Finally he said, Why not? As you say, it's a standard trick. There was quite a vogue for it at one time, I remember, but it's really a bit dated these days. He moved one hand slowly over the flask, weaving a word into the air. What are you doing? The skull asked eagerly. Hey, do it closer. Do it over here. I can't see a thing. The magician turned away, holding the flask to his breast and bowing over it. He began a whispery chant that made Molly think of the sounds that a dead fire continues to make long after the last coal has faded. You understand, he said, interrupting himself. It won't be anything special. Vin ordinaire, if that. Molly nodded solemnly. Schmendrick said, and it's usually too sweet, and how I'm supposed to get it to drink itself, I haven't the faintest idea. He took up the incantation again even more softly, while the skull complained bitterly that it couldn't see or hear anything. Molly said something quiet and hopeful to the Lady Amalthea, who neither looked at her nor replied. The chant stopped abruptly, and Schmendrick raised the flask to his lips. He sniffed at it first, muttering, Weak, weak, hardly any bouquet at all. Nobody ever made good wine by magic. Then he tilted it to drink, then shook it, then stared at it, and then, with a small, horrible smile, turned it over. Nothing ran out, nothing at all. That's done it, Schmendrick said almost cheerfully. He touched a dry tongue to his dry lips and repeated, That's done it, that has finally done it. Still smiling, he lifted the flask again to hurl it across the hall. No, wait, hey, don't! The skull's clattering voice protested so wildly that Schmendrick halted before the flask left his hand. He and Molly turned together to regard the skull, which, so great was its anguish, had actually begun to wriggle where it hung, cracking its weathered occiput hard against the pillar as it strove to free itself. Don't do that, he wailed. You people must be crazy, throwing away wine like that. Give it to me if you don't want it, but don't throw it away. It rocked and lurched on the pillar, whimpering. I just want to check because that wasn't it wasn't a workman's ute, but I thought it was the workman arrived. A dreamy, wondering look crossed Schmendrick's face, rather like a rain cloud drifting over dry country. Slowly he asked, And what use have you for wine with no tongue to taste it, no ribby palate to savour it, no gullet to gulp it down? 50 years dead, can it be that you still remember, still desire? 50 years dead, what else can I do? The skull had ceased its grotesque twitching, but frustration had made its voice almost human. I remember, it said. I remember more than wine. Give me a swallow, that's all. Give me a sip. Okay, that is the workman there. And I'll taste it as you never will, with all your runny flesh, all your buds and organs. I've had time to think. I know what wine is like. Give it to me. I'm going to have to pause there because I'll have to talk to the man about the stairs, and I mean, it might only take 5 minutes, it might take 10, but I don't want you hanging around for 5 or 10 minutes while I talk to a man about some wood, am I right? Oh, bless. It's as exciting as my life gets these days. So I'll be back with the next chat, with continuation of the story. Bye for now.